Hello everyone. Good evening, all of you. I am Ganesh Chaudhary from Digital Accounting and Assurance Board ICAI. I am welcoming you in the webinar of How to Crack ISA Assessment Test Module 5 and 6. Today we have us Professor Kapil Suri sir, who is gold medalist in the Bachelor of Engineering in Computer Science, then MTech from IIT Kanpur. He is also an international corporate trainer, consultant, business coach, and faculty in the domain of information technology and management from last more than 2 decades. It's going to be delightful to be the part of your session. So, Kapil sir, over to you.
Ganesh, I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good evening to all of you. Uh, I hope all of you thoroughly prepared for the final task, that is ESA 80 examination. And you people had the wonderful two revision session of last 2 days with respect to module 1, module 2, module 3, and module 4. So I hope all of you 70% thoroughly prepared with respect to each and every concept with respect to module number 1 to 4. And our agenda for the day is module number 5th and 6th. Ganesh, kindly on behalf of all, just kindly confirm that my screen is accessible as well as it is properly readable what I am writing.
Yes, sir.
Lovely, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Ganesh. And I hope it is
Thank you.
visible to all of you also.
Recording
Okay.
in progress.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Now, with respect to module number 5th, I hope all of you well versed that the weightage of this module is maximum amongst the 6 module. Okay, weightage of module number 1 is 18%, weightage of module number 2 is 16%, weightage of module number 3 is 18%, weightage of module number 4 is 18%, and weightage of module number 6th is 8%, but the weightage of module number 5th is maximum, that is 22%. Okay, and 22% of 200 means out of 200 according to the prototype defined by the institute as well as the committee. So 44 question with respect to module number 5th and module number 6. Weightage is 8%. So our total task of revision is 30%. Okay, 30% of 200, that is 60 questions. Okay, now module 5th focus area is protection. Protection of assets. Now here, when we'll think about, now here there are two keywords. Please kindly pay attention, and there you people can score maximum, I am 100% sure. Now whenever we'll think about the protection, so protection, even we can also known as the security. Okay, and whenever we'll think about the security, then default we think about risk, that is the risk. Okay, and whenever we'll think about the risk, then default will think about vulnerability, and whenever we'll think about the vulnerability, then default will think about threat. I hope all of you would agree, and let me use one statement. I hope all of you would agree. I'm saying if there is no vulnerability, then there is no existence of threat, and if there is no vulnerability and threat, then there is no existence of risk. Okay, and now whenever we'll think about solution with respect to risk, vulnerability, and threat, then default, always we think about control. Okay. And whenever we'll think about the control, then there is no mean, no existence of any control without policy. Okay. And whenever we'll think about the implementation of control, then along with the control default, we think about compliance. Okay. So, with respect to module number fifth, keywords related to which, and not only with respect to module number fifth, since module number one till module number four also, again and again you people heard about the term RISK. Again and again, I hope you people heard about the term vulnerability and threat, as well as the control. And default will consider that each and every chartered accountant, each and every auditor, he or she would be a subject matter expert in risk assessment. And whenever we'll think about the risk assessment, and then default, we think about asset, and especially whenever we'll think about from IAS auditor point of view, because here the focus is IAS audit examination. And whenever we'll think about the asset, then I hope all of you would agree with me that you got the clarity till date that whenever we'll think about IAS and IT, then there is no mean, no existence of IAS and IT until unless there is no business. So whenever we'll think about the business, so each and every business would be executed by each and every business organization. Okay. And each and every business organization having their own vision, each and every business organization having their own mission, each and every business organization having its own ethics. Okay. And with respect to each and every business, with respect to each and every business organization, they having a specific objective to achieve. So whenever we'll think about IAS and IT, so can we say that IAS plus IT implementation is according to objective, is according to the business organization mission, vision, as well as it should be strictly according to the ethics defined. And now, whenever we'll think about the asset, so with respect to each and every business organization, irrespective of the nature, irrespective of the size, whether a particular business organization is dedicated into banking, whether a particular business organization is dedicated into insurance, whether a particular business organization is dedicated into manufacturing unit. So irrespective of the nature, irrespective of the size, each and every business organization with respect to their each and every business, they having certain number of assets. And now I'm saying the most valuable asset is their business model, is their business model. And business model is nothing but business model is basically set of business process, set of business process. And I hope all of you would agree with me. With respect to each and every business organization, the strength of the business is depend on to the type of the business model. Okay. Like bank like a HDFC. Okay. Now before merging of State Housing Development Finance Corporation and HDFC Bank, business model followed by HDFC Bank and business model followed by Housing Development Finance Corporation would be totally different. And after merging, the business model is revised. Okay. Similarly, with respect to the State Bank of India, when State Bank of India was independent entity and State Bank of India, after the merging of each and every associate, business model is totally changed. Similarly, with respect to Air India, before acquisition by Tata, and now after the merging of Air India and Air Vistara, the business model is totally changed. So can we say that business model is one of the most valuable asset? And each and every business model is nothing but it is a set of business processes and business processes and business processes like business processes like purchase, business processes like procurement, business processes like production, business processes like finance, business processes like warehouse. So each and every business organization, their strength lies into the business model, and each and every business model is nothing but a set of business processes. Okay, and each and every business process is independent. Okay, but output of each and every business process is input for another business process. Okay, and then there is one more thing, I hope all of you would agree. Each and every business process, each and every business process is headed by a process owner. Like for example, with respect to the business purchase department, purchase manager is the head of the vertical. With respect to the procurement department, procurement manager is the vertical head, and this vertical head we can also known as the functional unit head. This we can also known as operation unit head, and this we can also known as, from the IAS auditor point of view, that purchase manager with respect to the purchase department, purchase manager with respect to the purchase department, I am saying is a one type of a purchase owner, is a one type of a process owner, and process owner we can also known as the risk owner. I hope all of you would agree. Within the purchase department, there are n number of people are working, there are n number of executives are working with respect to any business organization, irrespective of the nature and size. Okay, but purchase manager is responsible with respect to the total productivity. Purchase manager is responsible if there is any vulnerability occurred into the purchase unit, into the purchase department. Similarly, if we can consider the case of any banking organization, then I hope all of you would agree with me. In place of the purchase manager, like each and every branch having the branch manager, okay, and all of you having the vast experience in doing the bank audit. Okay, so can we say that branch manager would also be considered as a one type of a unit head, and branch manager is again a one type of a process owner? Okay, total productivity of the branch is dependent on to the decision making process performed by the branch manager. So something good happen within the branch and something unethical, means if there is any type of a vulnerability, if there is any type of a threat, if there is any type of a risk, so can we say that again the branch manager would be responsible? Okay, so down the line to the branch manager, there are n number of executives are working at the branch level, but branch manager would be considered as a one type of a process owner. Branch manager would be considered as a one type of a risk owner. Okay, now output of the branch manager is input for the regional manager. Okay, so under the one regional manager, there are multiple branch managers, and regional manager is again a one type of a process owner. Regional manager is again a one type of a risk owner. But level of the risk associated with respect to the branch manager and level of the risk associated with respect to the regional manager would remain same or would vary. I am saying the level of the risk would increase. Okay. Type of vulnerability with respect to the branch manager and type of vulnerability with respect to the regional manager would also vary. Okay. Although term would remain the same, that is a vulnerability, term would remain the same, that is a threat. Okay. But branch manager is not equal to the regional manager. Although branch manager and regional manager, they both are internal user with respect to a same bank, but privileges, access right of the branch manager is not equal to the privileges or access right of the regional manager. And now if suppose I will include the zonal manager. Now zonal manager is again a one type of internal user, but into the hierarchy zonal manager come above the regional manager. So can we say that the level of the risk would increase if we move from branch manager to the zonal manager? And this is my humble request into the examination. Please pay attention. If the question would be related to a process owner, please concentrate onto the keyword into the question. Okay, whether the question is related to the low level user, whether the question is related to internal user, whether the question is focus area is external user. Okay, whether it is related to the purchase manager or whether it is related to the vendor. Because with respect to the purchase department, vendor is what? External user. And I hope all of you would agree. Whenever we'll think about the privileges and access right, then privileges and access right of the internal user and privileges and access right of the external user would remain same or would vary? Definitely would vary. Okay. Then I'm saying that privileges and access right of the internal user would be much more than the privileges or access right of the external user. Okay. Then again, internal users are further classified into three layers. Okay. Low level user, middle level user, and the top level user. And just now I created one scenario that output of the branch manager is input for the regional manager, and output of the regional manager is input for the zonal manager, and then output of the zonal manager is input for the deputy directors, and then output of the deputy directors is input for the directors, and then output of the directors is input for the MD, CEO, or even for the chairman. Okay. Now they all are the internal user. Okay. And then there is one more thing. They all are the internal users, but placed at the different level. So the level of the risk, level of the vulnerability, level of the threat would also vary. Okay. So according to IAS auditor, the type of control which we're going to implement with respect to regional, with respect to the branch manager, and the type of the control those which we're going to implement with respect to the regional manager, and the type of the control which IAS auditor would advise with respect to the zonal manager, and the type of the control which IAS auditor would advise with respect to the chairman, with respect to the MD, CEO, or the, so all this control would be same, would be identical, or according to the hierarchy, according to the level of the risk. Okay. According to the level of vulnerability and according to the level of the threat, have to be, means more and more critical role of the user. More and more user is higher into the hierarchy. So control should be more and more strengthful or weak. Please concentrate in this manner, you have to be. And similarly here, now purchase manager. Okay. Purchase manager is a vertical head. Procurement manager is a vertical head. Okay, production manager is a vertical head, finance manager is a vertical head, warehouse manager is a vertical head, and they all are the internal user. And I hope all of you would agree with me that purchase manager is a one type, purchase manager, procurement manager, CFO, warehouse manager, production manager, they are again a one type of a process owner, they are again a one type of a risk owner. Okay, and then again output of the purchase manager is input for the procurement manager, then output of the purchase and procurement is input for the production, then output of the purchase and procurement is input for the CFO. And now here there is one more thing, please kindly, their number of question would be framed. Each and every process owner is handling a one type of a process. Okay, so quality of the process, okay, risk associated with the risk associated with respect to the process would be handled by a process owner. Okay, but what about here? I am saying now there is one more thing. Although each and every process owner is handle a one type of a process, okay, but broadly there are two type of processes. Please kindly pay attention, their number of question would come. One process we consider has a standard process, a standard process like, for example, I hope customer want to open the account into the bank, okay, and one vendor who is external user, okay, want to be empaneled with respect to a particular organization. So whenever the customer want to open the account, okay, so this is a process to perform. To configure the customer has to share the data. Okay, similarly for empanelment there is a process. But what about this empanelment process and customer registration process would be considered as a standard process or a critical process? Would be considered as a standard process or would be considered as a critical process? Okay, so I am saying there are some processes are standard process, okay, and some processes are critical process. Critical process, like for example, selection of the vendor, selection of the vendor with respect to any business organization, and especially like many of you, I hope performed a good number of inventory, stock audits, okay, statutory audits, okay, and I hope all of you would agree that role of the purchase manager would be considered as highly critical. Agree with this version? And purchase manager is a one type of a critical process owner. Okay, and if purchase manager fail to perform selection of the right vendor, so the impact would come only with respect to the purchase department or impact would come over the total productivity of the entire business organization. Okay, so if total productivity going to suffer and impact would come over the entire business organization, which is known as BIA, business impact analysis. So can we say that selection of the vendor would be a critical process? Okay, and then after the selection, vendors submit the quotation. Now, quotation submission is again a one type of a process. But after the quotation submission, when purchase department and on behalf of the purchase department, purchase manager generate the PO. So generation of the PO is again a one type of a process, but it would be considered as a standard process or a critical process. Okay, and if it is a critical process, so one process is selection of the vendor. Now, risk, vulnerability and threat associated during the selection of the vendor. Risk, vulnerability, threat during the selection of the vendor, okay, as well as during the PO generation would remain same or would vary. Then now, when the vendors supply the material, then with respect to the vendor, payment transaction would be performed. Okay, and payment transaction would be performed via the finance department, and at that time the role of the CFO. Although purchase manager handle the critical process, but I am saying the role of the CFO would be more critical, highly critical. Agree with this version? The role of the CFO would be highly critical. So can we say that it is a highly critical process? Payment transaction would be considered as highly critical process. Okay, vulnerability, threat, as well as the level of the risk during the payment transaction would not be identical like the vulnerability, threat, and risk which is associated when PO would be generated, as well as when vendor would supply the material inventory to the procurement department, and when procurement manager receive the inventory, receive the material, receive the component, receive the raw material. Now definitely it is again a critical process, but with respect to this, payment transaction would be considered, because financial transaction we always consider as highly sensitive, highly critical process. Okay, so now from IS auditor point of view, the type of the control, in this manner the question would come, please kindly. So the type of the control which you have to advise with respect to the standard process, the type of the control which you have to advise from IS auditor point of view with respect to the critical process, the type of the control which you have to advise with respect to highly critical process would be same or differ. So this is my humble request, please, during the examination, kindly pay attention into the question, the focus area is related to which process, whether the process is a standard process, whether the process is critical process, whether the process is highly critical. Okay, so according to the nature, according to the type, okay, and according to the level of the process, IS auditor has to advise the type of the control. Okay, then similarly, along with the control, IS auditor has to advise strength of the control is lie into the policy. So the type of the policy which we need or required with respect to one control, and the type of policy which we need or required with respect to another control, again won't be identical. Okay, so I hope this is clear. So can we say that business model, business process, okay, and along with the business process, I am saying with respect to each and every business organization, broadly there are two type of users, internal and external. Okay, and internal users further classified into three layers: LLU, and output of the low level users is MLU, that is the middle level users, and output of the middle level users is input for the top level users. Okay, and low level users, middle level users, and top level users, they all are valuable to each and every business organization. So can we say that they all are the valuable asset? Okay, but the type of process handled by the low level users, low level users are responsible, low level users are responsible only for one task, that is for data recording. Please kindly pay attention, data recording, because whenever any process execute, I hope all of you would agree, data would be generated, data would be generated. Okay, and for each and every business organization under the current scenario, we consider that data is the lifeline. Okay, so data is one of the most valuable entity, and data is one of the most valuable asset. Okay, but quality of the data define the quality of the business process, and quality of the business process define the quality of the business model. I hope you able to connect all this. Okay, and data recording, data gathering, data collection, all these activities performed by the low level users. Okay, and output of the low level users is database, because whenever the data would be generated, so at that time that data is unorganized. Okay, so when data would be generated, now no doubt that data is a valuable asset. Now when the when vendors submit the quotation, so quotation would contain n number of pieces of data set. Okay, when PO would be generated, then PO would again contain n number of pieces of data set. Okay, similarly if we'll consider the case of the banking organization. Okay, daily basis, whenever the customer visit to the branch, okay, and onto the cash counter customer perform the deposit, onto the cash counter customer perform the withdrawal. Okay, as well as onto the another counter customer want to generate the DD. Okay, onto the another counter customer requested to operate the locker. So can we say that with respect to all this different type of processes, data would be generated? Okay, and each and every piece of data would be a valuable asset for the banking organization, for the business organization. Okay, and now each and every business organization, they want to procure, they want to preserve each and every piece of the data. But what about here, when data would be generated? Okay, if suppose at that time the quality of the data would suffer. Okay, data, when data would be generated, so definitely each and every data having some source, and if that source having some vulnerability, so can we say that quality of the data would suffer? Because especially under the current scenario, whenever we'll think about the data recording, whenever we'll think about the data generation, whenever we'll think about the data collection. Okay, so I hope all of you would agree with me. Along with the user, from IS auditor point of view, data is not only generated via user, data is not only generated via internal user, and not only again the low level user, data would also be generated by external user. This external user may be a vendor, this external user may be a warehouse service provider, this external user may be a point of sale. This point of sale we can also known as a dealer, point of sale we also known as a retailer, this external user we also known as a customer. Okay, like if we'll consider the case of the banking organization, then I hope all of you would agree with me, especially from auditor point of view, and again especially now from IS auditor point of view. Under the current scenario, 80 to 85% banking operation would be, especially with respect to the personal banking, would be directly performed by the customer. So whenever the customer want to transfer the money from one account to another account, whenever the customer want to perform the payment transaction, whenever the customer want to want to generate the FDR, want to transfer the money from saving account to the fixed deposit, so with respect to each and every banking organization, customer is generating the data. So can we say that customer is also generating the data, but customer is what? External user. Okay, as well as the vendor. Now daily basis, I hope all of you would agree, each and every ATM machine. Okay, and ATM machine is what? ATM machine is a one type of IT. It comes under the IT infrastructure, because ATM machine is a one type of a hardware. And I'm saying ATM machine would be considered as a one type of POS, that is a point of sale. Please kindly pay attention. Okay. Along with the ATM machine, I hope all of you would agree. Under the current scenario, almost every bank parallel to the physical branches created kiosks, that is e-branches. Okay, for deposit, whenever the customer want to perform the deposit transaction, then there is a dedicated machine. Whenever the customer want to withdraw, then there is a dedicated machine like ATM. Whenever the customer want to deposit the check, okay, which is known as instrument, then again there is a dedicated machine. Earlier boxes were there. Okay, whenever the customer want to update the passbook, then again there is a dedicated machine. Okay, whenever the customer want to perform card swiping, so again there is a dedicated machine, device via which customer can swipe the card. So can we say that ATM machine, cash deposit machine, passbook update machine, okay, checkbook deposit machine, card swiping machine, all this would be considered as a type of point of sale, and all this are generating the data. And can we say that all this would be considered as a valuable asset? Agree with this version or not? But ATM machine, ATM machine, cash deposit machine, check, dip, cash deposit machine, check deposit machine, passbook update machine, card swiping machine, all this are different type of POS, and all this would be again a type of valuable. But what about all these devices? All these devices are storing the data, all these devices are processing the data, all these devices are doing analysis, all these devices are doing data visualization, or all these devices are simply generating the data. Okay, so all these devices are generating the data, as well as the user is also generating the data. But somewhere the user is internal user, somewhere the user is low level internal user, somewhere the user is external user, like a customer, vendor, warehouse. So the type of vulnerability, type of threat, okay, which is associated with respect to the low level user. I hope all of you, please kindly, type of vulnerability associated with respect to the low level user, type of vulnerability which is associated with respect to the customer. Now customer want to perform some unethical practices during the transaction. Okay, and customer perform the transaction with the bank. So customer would be considered as a vulnerability. Vulnerability is present into the customer, but customer vulnerability with respect to the bank, customer vulnerability with respect to any business organization would be considered as a vulnerability, or would be considered as a threat? Because I hope all of you would agree with me. Vulnerability is always within the system. Vulnerability, which is nothing but a weakness. Okay, so if there is a weakness in the customer, if there is a weakness in the vendor, if there is a weakness in the warehouse service provider, okay, if there is a weakness in the card swiping machine, if there is a weakness in the cash deposit machine, if there is a weakness, if there is a weakness into the ATM machine, okay, so with respect to any banking organization, customer vulnerability, can we say that would be considered as a threat? Vendor vulnerability would be considered as a threat. Warehouse vulnerability would be considered as a threat, because threat is always outside. And I hope all of you would agree. Like I mentioned at the beginning, if there is no vulnerability, then there is no existence of the threat. Okay, and threat always having the behavior to exploit the vulnerability, and threat always attack over the vulnerability. Okay, so vulnerability is always outside the system, and threat is always outside the system, and vulnerability is always within the system. And now there is one more thing. Okay, whenever we'll think about here the risk. Okay, so I am saying mathematically there is a formula to compute the risk. I hope risk is equal to A into V into T into I. I hope all of you would agree. Okay, because risk is nothing. Because at the beginning of each and every process, no expert means no expert anywhere in the world able to predict the exact risk, because risk is nothing but risk is a one type of probability. Risk is a one type of a probability. Agree with this version? Risk is a one type of likelihood, and risk is what? Certain or uncertain. Okay, risk is always uncertain. Okay, at the end of each and every process, at the end of each and every process, then we came to know the impact. But risk, risk won't be exist until unless there is no vulnerability and threat. Okay, and vulnerability is always associated with the asset. Okay, and a moment before I mentioned, and this you have to concentrate into the question whether this asset is valuable asset, whether this asset is highly valuable asset, whether this asset is critical, whether this asset is highly critical, whether this asset is a standard asset. Okay, so according to the level, according to the type of asset, can we say that the type of vulnerability would be associated? Okay, and then according to the type of vulnerability, type of the threat, and I stands for the impact. Okay, means whenever the threat exploit the vulnerability, okay, and vulnerability is present into the asset, so no doubt impact would come over the business organization. But please concentrate into the question would be framed like this: if asset is a low value asset, okay, asset is not a highly valuable asset, is not highly critical, so if threat exploit the vulnerability which is present into that asset, so impact would come has a critical impact, or impact would come has a low value impact. Okay, because somewhere the impact would be low, somewhere the impact would be mild, somewhere the impact would be high. Okay, and according to this type of level of, because there are number of questions would come with respect to the risk. Okay, and I hope please, whenever the question is over the risk, please concentrate on two: the level of the risk, and level of the risk you able to judge, you able to evaluate which type of asset we concern about. Like I hope, let me just give you here one scenario. Vendor and customer, they both are external user. I hope all of you would agree. Okay, and vendor and customer, they both are valuable asset with respect to any business organization. But with respect to vendor, customer is more valuable, or with respect to customer, vendor is more valuable? Okay, with respect to a one business organization, like for example, if we'll consider the case of the banking organization, and again if we'll consider the case of ATM machine, and again with respect to the ATM machine, if we'll consider the case of cash management process, and I hope all of you would agree with me, cash management process would be considered as a standard process or a critical process. And daily basis with respect to each and every business organization, especially the banking organization, cash management process, that is cash refilling, okay, would be performed directly by the bank or would be performed by the third party. Okay, and if this process would be handled by the third party means if this process is outsourced, okay, and this process is highly critical, so the level of risk would be minimum or maximum. Okay, and now if there is any vulnerabilities present into the third party service provider, okay, so that would be considered as a type of a threat. Okay, and cash management is highly critical process. Okay, so the impact would come over the banking organization at the low level or the high level. So the type of the control from the IS auditor point of view, which you have to advise, because the question would come in this manner. Please, honestly, you have to apply LOGIC and VISION. Please, just pay attention your level of alertness, your level of awareness, your level of attentiveness, and please read calmly, quietly, and one should be during the examination, please calm, quiet, cool. Your level of happiness should be up to the mark. Then you able to understand whether that paper is framed by me, whether that paper is framed by anybody else. So what the person is looking from you, from the IS auditor point of view, and ultimately, again and again, if I'm using the term auditor, because you are giving the examination of IS auditor, so you have to review, you have to evaluate, you have to examine. You have not created, so you have to review the vulnerability, you have to review the threat, you have to review the risk, and then you have to review the control, and then you have to review the weakness, you have to review what about the possibility that threat would able to exploit the vulnerability, you have to review the level of the risk. Okay, then you have to review the weakness into the control, then you have to review the weakness into the policy. Please kindly, how the, but what about here, according to the type of assets. Okay, now here, when we, if we are talking about, there are number of question would come even related to the risk. Okay, now whenever we'll think about the risk, now risk is uncertain, risk is probability, risk is likelihood. Okay, and nobody wins, nobody can able to predict the risk, but there are different type of risk and there are number of question would come. Okay, I'm saying either with respect to the hardware. Okay, means whenever we'll think about the IT risk or IT assets. Okay, so under the IT assets, we concern about hardware, we concern about software, we concern about networking. And whenever we'll think about IS, okay, then we concern about business model, then we concern about business process, then we concern about business user. Okay, then we concern about data, then we concern about the database. Please kindly, okay, now there are different type of the risk. Okay, and I'm saying, and there are number of question would come, please go through each and every concept thoroughly. Now there are different types of risk. I'm saying the first one would be inherent risk. Inherent risk. Okay, now the question would come, now all of you know what is the inherent risk. I'm saying inherent risk would also known as the natural risk. Agree? Okay, now scenario would, and this is a very common question and repeated this question would come. Suppose any business organization, that may be manufacturing, that may be the banking. Okay, each and every business organization, irrespective of the nature and size, they having n number of different type of vendor, and selection of the vendor would perform by the purchase department. Okay, now if vendor is what, external user. Okay, now suppose the best vendor would be selected by a particular business organization, but I'm saying vendor is what, external user. Now into the vendor, there is some inbuilt risk is present. Now that risk which is present into the vendor, okay, which is a natural risk, okay, so that would be considered as a type of a threat with respect to the business organization. Okay, now to overcome this, to mitigate this, okay, what IS auditor would advise? IS auditor would advise CONTROL, that is the control. And now the question would come whenever we'll think about the control, because whenever we'll think about vulnerability, whenever we'll think about threat, whenever we'll think about the risk, then from IS auditor point of view, there is only one solution, that is a control. Okay, and whenever we'll think about the control, then I am saying broadly there are three type of control. There are number of questions, please, everything is interlinked. You just see the keyword: assets, vulnerability, threat, risk, control. And then now there are different type of control. I am saying the first one is, I am saying, environmental control. Environmental control. Then I am saying the second one is external control. And then I'm saying the third one is internal control. Okay. And then now there is one more thing. Whenever we'll think about an IS audit is a one type of a internal audit. Okay. So maximum we have to deal with internal control, but you have to pay attention that we concern about which vulnerability, we concern about which threat, we concern about which level of the risk. So whether you have to advise invert environmental control, whether you have to advise external control, or whether you have to advise the internal control. And again, whenever we'll think about the internal control, I hope all of you would agree with me. Broadly, there are three type of control: P, D, and C: preventive, detective, and corrective. Okay. And I hope all of you would agree with me. If organization already implemented effective preventive control, then they have to be least concerned about the corrective control. But if there is a vulnerability into the preventive control, then organization, because if there is a vulnerability into the control, means there is scope, there is a probability that any threat, that threat may be a fraudster, that threat may be a hacker, that threat may be a cyber threat that able to exploit that control, can able to bypass that control, can able to bypass the policy. So always looking for improvisation. So even the question would come, you have to perform the control assessment. Okay. And if there is a vulnerability into the existing control, and existing control usually we consider as a preventive control. Okay. And whenever we suggest improvisation, that improvisation would always come under the corrective control, and detective control would always work both with the both in between the preventive and detective, because after the implementation of the preventive control, detective means a monitoring on regular basis. Okay. And through detective monitor what about the impact of the existing control, and if that existing control would be considered as the weak, then detective would generate the notification. Okay. Improvisation. And now here there is one more thing along with this. Whenever we'll think about the control, then controls are broadly are of two type. Either the control is physical, or the control is logical. And now whenever we'll think about here the risk, okay, and especially the inherent risk. So what I mentioned, one inherent risk with respect to the vendor, another inherent risk, maybe the question would come, if any organization hire a manpower, okay, manpower selection would perform by the HR department, okay, and whenever the organization hire the manpower either with respect to the low level, or whether the organization hire the manpower with respect to the middle level, or whenever the organization hire the manpower with respect to the top level, okay, so I hope all of you would agree with me, selection process of the low level user, selection process of the middle level user, and selection process of the top level user would be very, if user would be more and more senior into the hierarchy, more would be higher into the hierarchy, so the selection process would be more and more critical. But if suppose organization fail to perform, so this is again a one type of a vulnerability. And now one more thing, whenever the organization hire the employees they always hire from outside. Now after some time, after hiring, that employee would become internal user, okay, but into the employee also I am saying there are some inherent risk exist, inherent risk exist. I hope all of you would agree. Similarly, if we'll consider whenever the organization purchase any new hardware, that new hardware may be a client level machine. Okay, client level machine means maybe a desktop. Okay, desktop via which they are capturing the data, desktop via which they are processing the data, desktop which why they are analyzing the data. Okay, or they purchase the server. Now, please kindly pay attention. Client machine is a hardware, okay, and server is again a hardware, and both are the machine, but and both are the valuable asset for any business organization. But I am saying with respect to the client machine, server would be more valuable asset. I hope all of you would agree, because each and every piece of data which is generated either by the user or by any device, that device may be the CCTV, that device may be the biometric. Now please kindly pay attention, again intentionally I am using two more new terms. Now CCTV and biometric devices, from IAS auditor point of view, and their number of question would come, CCTV and biometric devices we can consider has a type of a control. CCTV and biometric devices, what we can consider as a type of a internal control. CCTV is a type of a physical control. Okay, CCTV is a type of a preventive control, detective control, or a corrective control. I am saying it is a type of a detective control. Okay, biometric devices are a type of physical plus logical control. Okay, and biometric devices are again a type of a internal control. And I am saying both these are not only a control, CCTV and biometric devices both are generating the data for the business organization. Agree with this version? Because with respect to any business organization, if we'll consider the case of ATM booth, if we consider any business organization at this moment, so 24/7, 365 days, whether the organization is is into the operation or not, even during the weekend, during the off day, CCTV and biometric devices would always remain live, active, and 24/7, 365 days. CCTV perform the data capturing, okay, perform the data collection. Similarly, if we'll consider the case of biometric devices, via biometric devices, maximum organization performing the attendance record in login and logout, okay, and via the thumb impression, iris, which we consider as a powerful technology, because biometric technology will consider one of the most powerful control at this moment. Okay, so can we say that CCTV and biometric devices consider would be considered as a data generating devices, and both are in the form of hardware. Okay, but organization like State Bank of India, organization like Infosys, organization like LIC, they are not a subject matter expert, they are not a domain expert in designing or developing the CCTV and biometric devices. CCTV and biometric devices are installed, are configured into their system, but they purchase the CCTV, they purchase the biometric devices from outside vendor. Okay, and then again there is one dedicated manufacturing unit design develop the CCTV, manufacturing unit design develop the biometric devices, and suppose during the development, if there is any type of a vulnerability present into the hardware, that hardware may be the CCTV, that hardware may be the biometric devices, that hardware may be a client machine, that may be a laptop, that hardware may be a server, and now that server may be a database server, that server may be a data warehouse, that server may be a web server, that server may be a application server. So can we consider as that type of risk would be considered as a natural risk, and to overcome that risk need or require the control. Okay, so inherent risk inherent risk minus control, okay, means to overcome the inherent risk. Okay, IS auditor always advise the control. Okay, like for example of the inherent risk, I hope all of you are using, and their repeated question would come. All of you are using your respective laptops. Okay, and into the laptop you people having the dedicated operating system. Okay, that operating system may be a Windows operating system, that operating system may be Unix operating system, that operating system may be a Linux operating system, that operating system, if you are using a MacBook, then that operating system may be a Macintosh. Okay, and if you are using a smartphone, then that operating system maybe a Windows operating system, that operating system may be Android, that operating system may be iOS. Okay, now you purchase the best laptop as per your knowledge, as per your awareness. And why you are using the laptop? To process the data with respect to your business transaction, with respect to your business operation, with respect to your business processes. Okay, and data is a valuable asset. I hope all of you. Similarly, each and every business organization. Okay, but that laptop which you purchase, before purchasing, suppose into that laptop there is some vulnerabilities already present. Okay, then now to communicate with the different hardware, to communicate with the processor, to communicate with the hard disk, to communicate with the RAM, okay, to communicate with the different hardware peripheral, you need require the operating system. And I hope all of you would agree, operating system is again a one type of a valuable asset. Agree with this version? And selection of the operating system would again be a important part. Okay, an operating system is a one type of a system level software. I hope all of you would agree. Okay, now suppose you are using a Windows operating system, and again suppose you are using in place of home edition. For time being, let me just go. Suppose you are using a home edition and some of the users are using the professional, some are using the pirated, and some are using the licensed version. So can we say that if user is using operating system and if that user is using the pirated version, so this is again a one type of vulnerability. Okay, then if user is using a home edition and performing the business transaction and want to process the critical data, okay, so in place of using the professional, in place of using the enterprise, Okay, if using the home edition, so this is again a one type of a vulnerability due to which business process would going to affect. Please concentrate how the questions. Then now one more thing, vulnerability which is present into the hardware, vulnerability which is present into the operating system. To overcome, you need required a antivirus. An antivirus is nothing but I am saying antivirus is a type of a control. An antivirus we are using with respect to the system level control to provide the protection with respect to the hardware as well as protection with respect to the software, that only authenticate user would able to perform the transaction. Because we always concern about three things here: I, A, and A dash. I stands for identification, A stands for authentication, and another A stands for authorization. Okay, means only the privileged user having the access right with respect to the specific hardware, only the privileged user having the access right with respect to a particular device, with respect to a particular machine, with respect to a particular software. Okay, now to overcome the vulnerability which is present into the hardware, and especially with respect to the operating system, and especially with respect to the Windows operating system, we use antivirus. An antivirus is a one type of a control, and antivirus perform all the three type of tasks: preventive, detective, as well as corrective. Okay, so even after implementation of a control, after the implementation of the best control, 100% risk would overcome, or still some risk would be present into the system. And after the implementation of control with respect to the inherent risk which would remain into the system, that risk is known as residual risk. Residual risk means remaining risk after the implementation, and this is a second type of a risk. Okay, so inherent risk, which is a natural risk. Okay, and after performing the assessment of the risk, okay, with respect to the asset, that asset is hardware, that asset is operating system. Okay, perform the selection of the control, and after the implementation of the control, still there is some risk would remain into the system. That risk is known as the residual risk. Please kindly, similarly, if we'll consider the case of any employee, please kindly how the questions would be. Now employee would be hired by the business organization, and daily employee is going to the business organization, but according to the business organization, that employee must have to follow some protocol, that employee must follow some standards, that employee must follow some standard rules and regulation. Okay, that employee always have to wear his or her ID. Okay, employee always have to log in and log out via biometric. Okay, and then employee is not allowed to interact with anybody inside, if that organization is highly critical, inside his or her cabin. Okay, so can we say that this is again a one type of a control? Okay, and whenever the employee enter into the organization, then security department, okay, always cross check, always cross examine, because if organization is highly critical, okay, critical means like if that employee is working under the data center, okay, then I hope all of you would agree with me. Somebody look after the single server, and somebody look after the entire data center which contain n number of servers. Okay, and server which is the backbone, not server is a valuable asset, but in place of one server there are multiple server, so data center would be highly critical. So somebody who is deployed to manage the, to look after the maintenance, to look after the operation part of the data center, so that employee would be considered as the standard employee or the critical employee. So whenever he or she would enter into the organization and whenever he or she would leave the organization, then organization implemented one control that security department would examine. Okay, just like the airport, I hope all of you well versed into the airport. Whenever we reach, then CISF, which is a one type of a security, you and me, we must to go through a one particular channel, I hope, and there is a policy. You and me, we are not allowed to wear anything which is against the policy. We are not allowed to wear the digital watch. We are not allowed to carry the mobile phone. So can we say that this type of the controls would come under the category of administrative control? And there are a number of, please kindly pay attention how the questions would be framed. Employee must have to wear ID. Okay. Then according to the level of employee, okay, control would be okay. Then what about employee must have to log in and log out? Okay. Employee is not allowed to carry anything from outside near his or her desk. So can we say that all this such type of control would come under the administrative control? Even the internal user are not allowed to enter inside the server room with respect to any business organization. So this type of control would also be considered as a administrative control. And people, those who are working under the highly sensitive department, under highly sensitive unit, like those who are managing the data center, person is a CFO, so he or she is not allowed to interact unwanted with even with the internal people. Okay. And somewhere organization train him or her before going to assign him that job. Okay. So can we say that such type of the control, which are usually the logical control, okay, would be come under the administrative control? Okay. Then again, I hope all of you would agree with me. Each and every business organization, whether a business organization is at the small level or the big enterprises as well as the SME or MSME, according to the management, each internal users are classified broadly into the three layer: low level user, middle level user, and then top level users. Okay. And then, like I mentioned, that low level users are responsible for data recording, for data gathering, data collection, and output of the low level user is database. And then the role of the middle level user is data analysis. Okay. And output of the low level users is report. Okay. And output of the low level users is input for the top level users, is input for the top level users. Output of the low level user is input for the middle level user. Output of the middle level users is input for the top level user. And top level users are responsible for decision making. Okay. For decision making. And the privileges or access right of the low level users are not equal to the privileges or access right of the middle level user. Privileges or access right of the middle level users are not equal to the top level user. And then again, like I mentioned at the beginning, people those who are working under the purchase department, people those who are working under the procurement department, people those who are working under the finance, they all are classified, which is known as a one type of a segregation, which is a one type of a classification. Okay, so this segregation according to the job role, segregation according to the job duty. Okay, can we say that this is again a one type of a control, and this type of control means segregation, segregation, classification, means person is working at the low level, person is working at the middle level, person is working under the particular department, and according to his or her department and according to his or her level, his or her privileges or access right would be defined, would be considered as again a logical control. Okay, and why organization concern about this? Because organization always concern about three things: CIA, that is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Okay, so if internal users are classified according to their department, okay, there is a segregation. Then again, after the department classification, they are further classified, they are further segregated with respect to a particular department: low level user, middle level users, top level user. So can we say that this is a logical control to maintain confidentiality? And then all this control would become under the administrative control, and you have to pay attention. There are number of questions would come, and usually the administrative controls mostly are the logical control, and mostly we concern about to maintain the confidentiality. And if the level of the confidentiality is high, then default be able to maintain the level of integrity and availability. But organization is more concerned about here the confidentiality. Okay, now broadly there are two type of risk: inherent, residual. Then there is another type of a risk. So residual risk is a second type of risk. Then there is a third type of risk, that is risk A, RA. Just to save the time, I am writing in short. RA, that which stands for risk appetite, and I hope all of you would agree. Risk appetite would vary from organization to organization. Like for example, if we'll consider the case of person like a Gautam Adani, okay, 2 years before Hindenburg attack, and Hindenburg with respect to Gautam Adani would be considered as a threat. Agree with this version? Okay, and Hindenburg exploited the vulnerability into the Adani. Okay, now there is some impact would come, and there was a huge financial loss. Worth was more than $150 billion. Okay, now the same Hindenburg after 2 years again second time re-attack, and this time via SEBI. Okay, so and still Gautam Adani is able to survive. So can we say that risk appetite means whenever the risk occurred, so appetite of the risk, appetite to digest that risk would vary from organization to organization. Like in place of this, if we'll consider the case of a database server, okay, and database server which maintain each and every piece of data, means whenever the data would be generated, whenever the data would be recorded, whenever the data would be organized in the structured form, in the table form, okay, each and every piece of data would be recorded into the database server. So with data is a valuable asset, but with respect to the data, database would be more valuable. Okay, but suppose on some day suddenly due to technical glitch, please kindly in this manner the question would be framed: due to technical glitch there is some bug, error, defect would be occur into the server, and organization unable to retrieve certain pieces of data set from that existing server. Okay, And now, even at that time, all the organization having the backup policy, okay, they usually maintain the backup of the data. But there are some data due to technical glitch, they are unable to perform the recovery. They don't have the backup. And now organization have to test their risk appetite, whether they able to digest this risk or not. Okay, now risk appetite, a moment before I mentioned, vary from organization to organization. Risk appetite of a State Bank of India and risk appetite of one cooperative bank, which usually come under the category of SME and MSME, because State Bank of India, ICICI Bank, HDFC Bank would come under the category of MNCs, would come under the category of big enterprises. So risk appetite of the big enterprises and risk appetite of the small level business organization would vary. Then along with this risk appetite, there is another type of risk, that is RT, risk tolerance. Okay, how much, that up to what level organization, like first time, second time Hindenburg is attacking. Okay, one time data breach, second time data breach, one time cyber attack, second time cyber attack into the same organization. Okay, but each and every organization, like an individual, having some tolerance level, but this again vary from organization to organization. Okay, so broadly, how many type of risk? Inherent risk. Then second is residual risk, and you have to pay attention. Okay, then risk appetite. Okay, and what about whenever we perform risk assessment? Okay, then always first of all we focus on to risk identification, and whenever we'll think about the risk identification, then focus about the asset. Okay, and after the risk identification, we perform the risk analysis, and after the risk analysis we always concern. So whenever we'll think about the risk management, so with respect to the risk management, how many number of processes? First of all, risk identification. After the risk identification, risk analysis, and after the risk analysis, after the risk analysis, risk respond. And whenever we'll think about the risk respond, then we concern about the different type of risk. Different type of risk, either we can, either organization having the capacity to accept that risk, or that organization can able to avoid that risk, or that organization can able to transfer that risk, or that organization like to mitigate that risk. Okay, now you have to pay attention, please. Accept, okay, means organization purchase one hardware, organization purchase one software, that software designed developed by the third party. Just like if we'll consider the case of the CBS system. Okay, now each and every bank is incomplete without the CBS system. Okay, now that CBS system, whether it is a Finacle, whether that CBS system is FlexQ, whether that CBS system is TCS Bank. Okay, all this solution designed developed by the third party. Okay, that third party may be Infosys, that third party may be Oracle, that third party maybe TCS. Okay, so although organizations, suppose before going to assign that job to design or develop that software via third party, they are aware that into the third party system, suppose there is some vulnerability is present, but then also the critical task via which they're going to maintain, via which they're going to execute their business process, that is the software application. They assign that job, and software application is a valuable asset for each and every business organization. They assign that job to the third party to design or develop that software. Okay, so can we say that they are aware, but then also they assigned the job? So this is a case of risk acceptance, acceptance. Okay, similarly here, if we'll consider the case of organization is using, question would be framed like this: organization is using a one particular type of antivirus. Okay, okay, and now along with the antivirus, with respect to the network, okay, with respect to the data sharing, so to overcome the vulnerability present into the network, please kindly pay attention. Now I introduce the one more thing. I'm using another term, that is the network. Okay, and whenever we'll think about the network, okay, so network we always use for hardware sharing, for software sharing, and for data sharing. And I hope all of you would agree with me. Maximum vulnerability, maximum threat, and the level of the risk with respect to the network in place of hardware, in place of the software, in place of the database, in place of the user would be maximum. Please, you have to pay attention that question is related to what, and I hope all of you would agree with me. Just like a business model, just like a business process, just like a user, just like a data, just like a database, just like a data warehouse, just like a database server, okay, just like a web server, just like a application server, okay, just like a reporting server. I am saying network is again a valuable asset for any business organization, but network contain maximum vulnerability, network contain maximum threat, network contain maximum level of the risk. So type of the control which IS auditor would advise to maintain the level of CIA, that is confidentiality, integrity, and availability, with respect to the hardware, with respect to the software, with respect to the user. Okay, and I hope, let me use the one more statement. I am saying under the current scenario, 90 to 95% business organizations are enabled with ERP, and their number of questions would come. Okay, and ERP is nothing but ERP is a type of a database, is a type of a database. Okay, the main attraction of ERP, it works on to the principle JIT, right information, right user at the right time. And via ERP having the centralized repository system, and via ERP we connected multiple internal user. Some users belongs to the low level, some user belongs to the top middle level, some user belongs to the top level, some users are external user, number of vendors, customer, they all are. So more and more broader is the size of ERP. Okay, and all these users are located at different location. So can we say that we are unable to implement ERP? Although ERP is a type of database, but to implement the ERP, we need required a network. And if there is any vulnerabilities present into the network, so that would be considered as a type of a threat with respect to ERP. Okay, and that would be considered as a type of a threat even with respect to the business organization, because impact would come, because any hacker, any fraudster usually enter via network, and hacker, fraudster don't have any interest into the network, they don't have any interest into the hardware, they don't have any interest into the software. Hacker, fraudster always having the interest into the data which is present into the database server, and within the database server there is a database. Okay, and now this network, which is further classified into three types. Please kindly pay attention. One is intranetwork, which is also known as the LAN network. Then there is another network known as internet, which is also known as wide area network, and in between there is a one more network, that is extranet. Okay, and in intranetwork, local area network, usually internal users, usually internal users, internal users. Okay, and in wide area network, along with the internal users, external users. Okay, and under the current scenario, we are following two types of the two types of the model. Okay, B2B and B2C. Okay, when purchase department, please kindly pay attention how the question would be framed. When purchase department want to share some data with the procurement department. Now purchase department is business vertical 1, procurement department is business vertical 2, and purchase department want to share data with the finance department, means there is a transaction between purchase manager and the CFO. Okay, now in purchase manager is using his or her dedicated machine, and he or she having the dedicated access right. He or she is connected via a specific SAP module. Okay, module. Okay, just assume. Okay, PP module. Okay, and now CFO is connected by FICO module. Okay, and access right of the CFO with respect to the FICO, and access right of the purchase manager with respect to PPMM. Okay, and even data would be shared by purchase manager with the CFO. CFO want to extract the data via PP or MM. And now if there is, and they both are physically located at different location, and if there is any vulnerability, and both this would belongs to local area network. I hope all of you would agree with me. Okay, and now in this local area network, please kindly pay attention. Whenever we'll think about the network, so this network again broadly are of two type. I am saying connection oriented. Connection oriented Hello, Ganesh, I'm audible. Ganesh, kindly just confirm my screen is accessible because suddenly I don't know my screen. Uh, okay, my dear, let me just reconnect. Just give me a moment, please. I'm just reconnecting, Ganesh. This is a technical glitch. Ganesh, moment, please. Kindly just communicate to all, please. Yeah. Ganesh, kindly confirm my screen is accessible. Oh, is it? Is it? Let me, my dear. Let me. Oh, that my device was disconnected. That's why. Okay. Okay.
Recording in progress.
Ganesh. Okay, fine. I'm properly audible. Okay, better. So, so from if the question would be like both the options are available, connection oriented as well as that. Pardon? Oh, is it? It is disconnected. Oh my goodness. Ganesh, you have to make me host, my dear. I'm not getting the privilege. Oh no, I'm getting. Just wait. Just wait. Just wait. Ganesh, confirm. It is okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ganesh, for your cooperation. Yeah. So from IS auditor point of view, if the question would come like this, if both the options would be available, that is connection oriented and connectionless. Okay. Now I am not saying that connectionless IS auditor want advice because user like if user would be external user User would be a customer, user would be a vendor, user would be a warehouse service provider, as well as if user is internal but not highly sensitive. Okay, if that user would be handled by, if that user is handling the standard business process and that user is configured with the connectionless network, then there is no harm. But highly critical user like a CFO, highly critical user like a purchase manager, highly critical user like a branch manager, highly critical user like a regional manager, all this would come under the connection oriented. And in connection oriented physical network, and in physical network we always use the protocol TCP. Okay, and in connectionless, we always use the protocol UDP. And this question would also come in connection. Use we always use protocol TCP, transmission control protocol. And in connectionless, whether it is a Bluetooth, whether it is a Wi-Fi, we always use the protocol UDP, user datagram protocol. Okay, and along with this, each and every device having its own identification, because I already mentioned, we concern about IS auditor is always concerned about identification, authentication, and authorization, just like with respect to the user, employee ID, just like with respect to the user, his or her role with respect to a particular department. Okay, so that would define his or her identification and authentication, and along with that, and with respect to that, define the authorization. Similarly, here, with respect to the network, I'm saying IP address. Okay, so each and every device which is a part of the network, each and every peripheral which is a part of the network, having his, each and every device having its own IP address. Okay, one laptop having its own IP address, one mobile phone or a smartphone which is a part via which we are sharing the data, we are performing the business transaction, we are executing the business process. Server also having the IP address. Now again the question would come. Please have a look how the questions would be. Through one question, how the another question would be generated. Okay, and please you have to pay attention. Question is related to the hardware, question is related to the software, question is related to the system level software, question is related to the application level software, question is related to the general purpose application level software, question is related to the customize, or question is related to the specialized software, like for example ERP, SAP, Tele, Finacle, okay, GST, all this would be come under specialized application level software. Okay, then each and every ERP is classified into a number of module. Okay, then with respect to each and every module, there are number of users would be configured, and according to the level of the user into the hierarchy, his or her privileges or access right would be defined. So all this would be considered as a control, and all these controls are usually the logical controls. I hope all of you would agree. Okay, but along with this, Ganesh, kindly just give me give me a moment. Let me. Hello. Ganesh, I'm audible. Ganesh, I'm audible. Ganesh, Ganesh, I'm audible. Kindly confirm. Ganesh, I'm audible. Ganesh, I'm audible. Yeah, kindly confirm I'm audible. Ganesh, are you there? Uh, Somebody would able to confirm, even from technical team, that I am audible or not? Okay, okay, fine. Let me just consider that I am audible. Okay, so now whenever we'll think about any ERP, I hope all of you would agree with this, that ERP always we implement in the form of the module. Okay, and according to module, okay, module is nothing but it is a one type of a database. Okay, and according to the type of the module, whether it is a PP, whether it is a MM, according to the functional unit, we define a particular type of the user, we configure a particular type of the user, we define his or her access right. So all this would be come under the control. And then, like I mentioned at the beginning, there is no mean, no existence of the control without policy, and strength of the control is always exist into the policy. More and more powerful is the, if more and more critical is the business process, we need required more and more effective or the powerful control. But strength of the control is dependent on to the policy. So if we define a control with respect to one particular database server, and database server is highly critical, I'm just creating another scenario. Okay, here with respect to the ERP, now with respect to the particular module which is a one type of a database, and that ERP module is installed into the particular server. Okay, and that module is suppose SAP FICO. Okay, which contain highly sensitive data. So IP address of that server machine, what we define once, that have to remain forever, or that IP address periodically have to be changed. Because I am saying this question would also come from IS auditor point of view. What you would advise if you going to perform the control assessment? Okay, and while performing the control assessment, you have to perform the policy assessment. And when you're going to perform the control assessment, now you have to look whether that hardware, that process, that application which is processing the data, which is procuring the data, that is the standard or critical. Now if that is database server which is highly critical, so IP address, which is a one type of identification. Okay, an IP address, I hope all of you would agree with me, broadly are of two type, static and dynamic. Okay, now all of you know that IP address, this is again the question would come, please have a look how the things would be. IP address would be generated via DHCP, that is dynamic host configuration protocol. Okay, and if we are, if organization has not defined dedicated IP address, okay, means have not restricted, but that device, that machine is a part of the network, then automatically it generate the IP address which is a dynamic IP address. Okay, dynamic IP address, and then a static IP address. And I am saying dynamic IP address contain maximum vulnerability with respect to the static IP address. So, from IS auditor point of view, to provide the protection to the network, and into the network, there is a server, into the network, there is a client. Okay, and into the network, if that server is highly sensitive, because there is one server is a web server and there is another server is a database server. And I'm saying with respect to the web server, database server would be most sensitive, would be more critical server. So that type of IP address policy, which organization going to configure, which organization going to implement with respect to the database server, and type of IP address policy which organization going to implement with respect to the web server, and type of IP address policy which going organization going to implement with respect to the different application user, that may be the client, that those client application users, some may be internal users, some may be external users, some may be low level, middle level, and top level. So this IP address policy would be same with respect to the server, with respect to one server to another server, with respect to the server and the client, with respect to one client to another client, or it would vary. Okay, so and then again one more thing, I am saying with respect to each and every server as well as with respect to each and every internal user, IP address policy should be static. Okay, so can we say that this is again a one type of a control? A static IP address is a control. Okay, then IP address policy would vary from client machine to the server machine, from one server to another server. So this is again another type of a control. Okay, then now if server is highly critical, okay, like a branch server and regional branch server and the main server of the banking organization, and I'm saying periodically or on regular basis IP address have to be revised. So can we say that this is again a one type of a control? Okay, so all these controls are with respect to the network level control. And now whenever we'll think about network, then with respect to the network, top level user who is going to implement all this control, okay, on regular basis, okay, he or she is what? NA, that is the network administrator. Whenever we'll think about, whenever we'll think about the database, then with respect to the database, the top level user is DBA. Okay, and whenever hardware and software, and hardware plus software is, I am saying with respect to hardware system administrator. Okay, so system administrator to implement the control with respect to hardware and software. DBA is responsible to implement the control with respect to an organization like State Bank of India, organization like Tata, not having one server but multiple server, not having one database server, and again it is not necessary that each and every internal user having the privilege to access each and every server. Okay, and this server access policy, and especially with respect to the database server access policy, would be implemented by DBA. Okay, with respect to the hardware within the organization, different hardware there are in different type of software. User having accessibility as per the business need, as per the business requirement. User can able to use the hardware, user can able to use the software. Okay, but no application user, even at the top level with respect to the business organization, having the privilege that he or she can perform R&D or the changes with respect to the hardware, with respect to the software. Okay, and for that purpose, system administrator would be responsible. Okay, similarly with respect to the network, whenever the IP address policy, okay, network segmentation, okay, network segmentation, which is a again a one type control with respect to the network security, network segmentation, which we also know as network zoning. Okay, and network segmentation we also known as subnetwork. We also known as subnetwork. Okay, like one network dedicated with respect to a purchase department, another network dedicated with respect to the procurement, another network dedicated with respect to the finance. Okay, so this is what a decomposition or distribution of the network, and more be decomposed. More and more network is segmented. This is known as network zoning. So can we say that this is again a one type of a control? And then again, there is a dedicated IP address policy with respect to the finance department, with respect to n number of users, those which are working under the finance department, and IP address policy, network segmentation. This would come under the logical control. Okay. And why we perform this? Because to maintain high level of confidentiality. Okay. So along with this, if we'll consider the case of here, and then along with this IP address, along with this network segmentation, network zoning, and subnetwork organization, there are a number of questions would come, hardware as well as software. Okay, so firewall is a which type of a control? It is a physical as well as a logical control, preventive control, and firewall. We configure both network and firewall authenticate user is into the system. Okay, please kindly pay attention. The question is related to the firewall. Okay, so this is all actually we use to provide the protection. Okay, this is a security layer between outside network and the internal network, because any organization anywhere in the world having full control over their network, no organization having any control network. So consider as a about emerging technologies. Okay. Yes, Ganesh. Yes, Ganesh. To the I'm doing the delivery. I was not when I was disconnected. Ganesh, when I was disconnected, my dear, means when I was disconnected, because since long I am continuously into the delivery, I am not aware. Connected, disconnected via one device or Okay, but I was audible. Okay, okay, fine. Okay, that might be due to the bandwidth. Okay, my dear. Okay, now it is fine. I'm properly audible. Okay, please, thank you. Okay, okay. Now, please kindly concentrate. Now, in module number 6, which is when we concern about emerging technologies. Okay, and under the emerging technologies, here we concern about number 1, IoT. Then we concern about cloud computing. Then concern about blockchain. Then we concern about data analytics. Then we concern about cyber security. And kindly, it's very easy and there are a number of questions. Now, I hope all of you are as well as thoroughly aware about the FASTag. And FASTag is a pure implementation in which we are using as well as we are using the cloud computing, IoT, or Internet of in your car there is one sensor, then there is another sensor is installed at the toll plaza, and whenever the vehicle reach at the toll plaza, then there is a communication established between one sensor to another sensor, and the data would be generated. So I am saying when via sensor data capturing for data generation, in any sensor is installed into one device, into one machine, another one entire your manufacturing unit via when one machine can able to communicate with another machine. Volume of the data which is generated along with the volume of the data, velocity of audio, like at this moment, you just have a look practically. To you, okay, but how my voice is reaching to all of you? I am somewhere in the world, you people are somewhere in the world. So can we say that I am connected via one device? Okay, and that device is and that device having one sensor. Okay, and that device sensor is basically capturing my voice. Okay, then there is another sensor is installed into your device. Okay, and through that sensor you people are listening my voice. Okay, so can we say that more or less it is a sensor to sensor communication, and this is a device to device communication. Okay, although when I am delivering. Like at this moment, I am delivering. So with respect to you people, I am generating the data. I hope all of you would agree. Okay. And one form of the data, like at this moment, with respect to the session, I am generating the data verbally as well as I am typing. Okay. So form of the data which I am generating via audio and the form of the data which I am typing textual, both would be same or differ. So one form of the data is logical, another form of the data is arithmetical, then logical data may be classified into textual data, may be classified into image, audio, video, which is known as the graphical data. Okay, so volume, velocity, variety, but IS auditor is also concerned about data authenticity. So auditor is always concerned about the data sources, quality of the data sources. So we concern about data veracity. So volume, velocity, variety, and veracity. 4V, whenever we'll think about, and I'm saying under the current scenario, 24 by 7, 365 days via IoT. Organizations are generating the data, although data is the lifeline. But I'm saying now this data is converted into the big data. And whenever we'll think about the big data, okay, then in big data, we concern about 4V: volume, velocity, variety, and veracity. And whenever we'll think about the big data, then big data is nothing. But big data is basically a technique which is a combination of integration of structured data which is always in the tabular form, and all of you would agree whenever we'll think about the database. Okay. And just now I mentioned that 90 to 95% business organizations are enabled with ERP. Okay. Okay. Whether the organizations are using SAP, whether the organizations are using Oracle, okay. Each and every ERP is in the form of a database, and this database in the form of RDBMS. Okay. And RDBMS means set of table, and each and every table having the definite structure, okay, which is known as the schema. And that structure schema is defined by the DA, that is the data administrator. Okay. Although with respect to the database, the top level user is DBA. But whenever we'll think about the structure, whenever we'll structure which is also known as the schema, then a structure in a schema would be designed, developed by the data administrator. Okay. And now into each and every table, there is a dedicated primary key. Then one table is linked to another table using the foreign key. Okay. And like one table is a customer table, another table is a transaction table, another table is a product table, services table. So this type of data which is in the tabular form is known as the structured data. But along with the structured data, we are using unstructured data, and this unstructured data which is in the form of image, unstructured data which is in the form of audio, this unstructured data which is in the form of video, okay, this unstructured data which is in the form of documents, okay, documents like the email, documents like the notification, documents like the memo, okay, and each and every data is available asset. Okay. So unstructured data plus structured data, and along with this there is one more type of data which is known as which is known as semi-structured data. Semi-structured data, data which is in the form of JSON, data which is in the form of XML, data which is in the form of HTML, data which is in the form of TXT, data which is in the form of CSV, data which is in the form of PDF. So I'm saying big data is nothing but big data is a one type of a technique. Okay, and big data is integration of three type of data: structured data, semi-structured data, and unstructured data. Okay, and big data is concerned about 4V: volume, velocity, and variety, plus veracity, that is authenticity, correctness. Okay, data should be free of bugs, defects, and error. Okay, then now IoT is generating the huge volume of data, which is a big data. And now each and every physical server having the finite capacity to store the data. So I am saying under the current scenario, there is hardly any business organization which is fully dependent onto storage purpose physical server. Along with the physical server, they are using the cloud storage, and cloud storage means whenever we'll think about cloud computing, then default will think about the cloud storage. And cloud storage we also known as, I hope all of you would agree, cloud storage we also known as the virtual storage. Virtual storage. Okay, and data would be generated by the business organization. And whenever we'll think about the cloud computing, then I'm saying cloud computing services would be provided by cloud computing services. Services like whether it is IaaS, infrastructure as a service, whether PaaS, that is platform as a service, or whether it is Ganesh, I'm audible. Ganesh, I'm audible. Okay, fine. Okay. When I was disconnected, my dear, minute before or quite long? Okay, okay, fine. Where I was, can you able to, which was the last statement I was, because I was into the flow. Okay, let me just repeat. Okay, no problem, no problem. So, from IS auditor point of view, I am saying you have performed the assessment and please, okay, if whenever will the storage, then cloud services would always be provided. Okay, and if services are infrastructure as a service, services are platform as a service, software as a service, okay, then the type of vulnerability, type of the threat, and level of the risk would be very high. Okay, means data would be stored into the physical server and data would be stored into the cloud server and it would be managed. Third party and the level of the risk would be very high. So, so the type of the control that we need required with respect to IoT, the type of the no, my dear, I don't know. I am so bad. Yeah, yeah, I'm also audible. Okay, okay, okay. I think okay. I think just last few minutes are left. I think. Just give me. Okay, okay. Might be okay. So now, whenever we'll think about the data security, especially under the current scenario, then default will think about the blockchain. Okay, and there are number of so blockchain technology we always use with respect to data security and data security. And in blockchain, we always concern about hash value. Okay, we always concern about the hash value. Okay, now what about this hash value? Means whatever the input data, that doesn't matter, that input data may be of 1 bit, that input data may be of n number of terabytes. Okay, over that we apply the hash algorithm. Okay, hash algorithm, which is also known as the hash function. Okay, that may be MD1, MD2, SHA1, SHA2. Okay, MD, which stands for message digest, SHA, which stands for secure hash algorithm. Okay, 2, which stands for 256. Okay, and whenever we apply the hash algorithm, then with respect to each and every data, there is a unique which is known as the hash value. And now, what about the attraction of this hash value? In place of using the hash, this process is known as hashing. This process is known as hashing. Okay. Now, in place of hashing, in place of hash value, you all were, whenever will think about the data security. Okay. We always concern about the cryptography. In cryptography, we use the concept of encryption and decryption. Why encryption? We transform, we transform in addition, via encryption, we always transform the plain text. We always transform the plain text into the special text, which is known as the ciphertext. Okay. And then, whenever we'll think about decryption, whenever we'll think about decryption, then via decryption, we transform the special text, that is the ciphertext, into the plain text. And here we use the concept of public key and the private key. Okay, means sender and receiver. Okay, that sender may be a branch manager, receiver may be a regional manager. Okay, and I hope all of you would agree. Output of the branch manager is input for the regional manager. Output of the regional manager is input for the zonal manager. Okay, so whenever the data would be shared, it would always be apply encrypt. That data should be always be shared over the network in the encrypted form. Okay, and here we apply the technique, which is a one type of algorithm, that is encryption. And plain text means that report may be in the form of ERP database, that report may be in the form of data visualization in the form of a graph chart. Okay, via in analysis perform using Excel, analysis would perform either into the Power BI, analysis would perform either using the Python, any of the tool. Okay, using the CAT technique. Okay, but before going to share, IS auditor always advise that that data must be transformed from plain text into the cipher text, and then sender use his or her private key, and along with that sender would use public key of the receiver. Okay, and this public and private key both are the logical keys, and this cryptography is nothing but this is a one type of a logical control to maintain high level of confidentiality. Okay, then when this message would reach to the destination user, then destination user would use his or her private key. Along with this, use the public key of the sender. That sender may be a branch manager, that sender may be a purchase manager. That's why cryptography, we also known as PKI infrastructure, that is public key infrastructure. But cryptography, although till date, based on which digital signatures defined, till date we consider, and this question would come, digital signatures are purely based on key. Okay, and in cryptography we use two techniques, encryption and decryption. Okay, in cryptography we use public key, private key, and cryptography is also known as PKI infrastructure, public key infrastructure. Cryptography is a powerful data security algorithm. Cryptography is a powerful data security technology. There is one drawback in cryptography. Cryptography is a two-way process. Encrypt the message as well as decrypt the message. And if suppose any of the hacker, any of the fraudster able to access either the private key of the sender or receiver, and I'm saying that hacker, that fraudster can also be able to decrypt the message. So looking for the better data security technique or algorithm, and to own the vulnerability of cryptography, we use the hashing. And in blockchain, the main attraction is hash value. And hash value is nothing because hashing is a one-way process. Once the hash value would be generated, then nobody means nobody can able to perform the reverse engineering. And the main attraction of the blockchain. Okay, so blockchain mainly we are using for purpose, and in blockchain we use the concept of DLT, that is distributed ledger technology. Okay, and blockchain In blockchain, we used, like I mentioned, under the current scenario, most of the business organizations are under the ERP based on client server network. But in blockchain, you use a peer-to-peer network. That is a point-to-point network. Okay. And in case of user server, here we use peer-to-peer network. Okay. And peer-to-peer network, point-to-point network, also having the vulnerability and server having the vulnerability. But I am saying percentage of vulnerability, percentage of threat, and percentage level of the risk in peer-to-peer network would be minimum server. That's why we consider the blockchain is highly secured, and a copy of the data would be shared between all the functional, between all the respective user, those which are part of the data sharing, which is part of the blockchain. Okay. So blockchain, we are using security. Okay. But there is a huge infrastructure requirement, there is a huge cost. So even the question would come from the IS auditor point of view, you would advise blockchain to each and every business organization. And whenever we'll think about the implementation of the blockchain, in blockchain we are not only using cryptography, we are not using only the hashing. In blockchain we are using the concept of cryptography, means over the one control another control. That's why we consider that blockchain is immutable. In normal database we perform four operation: create, insert, modify, and delete. But in blockchain, once the data is generated, then nobody able to alter, nobody means nobody can able to modify, nobody means to delete. Okay. That's why the data is known as immutable. Okay. And blockchain, mainly from the IS auditor point of view, is always advised with respect to data security. Okay. Then under the current scenario, we concern about data analytics, means to go more inside the data. To go more inside the data, we perform one process known as data mining. Okay. Means over the one mining, like at this moment, suppose I'm interested to know, if suppose I ask to Ganesh that total how many members are attending this session, and out of this total member, how many are uh, how many members are the senior member, how many young member. So this is the data analysis. But suppose I'm more interested to know that how many members from NIRC, how many members are from WIRC, how many members are from EIRC, how many members are from SIRC, then within the SIRC, how many members are from Bangalore, how many members are from Coimbatore. Means when I am going more inside the data to produce more and more quality oriented information. So over the one although when we perform analysis and analytics, always we use two type of the data: current data and historical data. Current data, which we also known as real time data, which we also known as the dynamic data. Okay. And under the current scenario, each and every is running online. Okay. But data which is generated till yesterday, that data would be considered as historical data. Okay. And historical data would be much more than the volume of the current data. And historical data is always in the static data. And historical data we always preserve, historical data we always store into the data warehouse. Current data, real time data, we always preserve server. Okay, so whenever we'll think about the data analytics, so during the data analytics, what we have to do, out of the total volume of data which is stored into the data warehouse, it is not necessary that we going to use each of data. Out of the total volume, part of the data means a sample we extract, because auditor always perform three level of process with respect to the data analytics: data extraction, data transformation, and finally after performing the audit as per the objective, as per the audit need requirement, whatever the audit report would be generated. Different deal tool like Excel, ETL tool like MS Access, tool like Power BI, Power Query. Okay, within Power BI there is a Power Query. All the Power Query we are using within Excel also. Okay, ETL tool. And the information. Okay, after performing the analysis, okay, and data we extract either through the physical server, through the cloud server, data we extract through the database server, through the data warehouse, and whenever we extract the data, we always extract the part of the data, and this part of the data is data mart. Data mart. Okay, and after performing the data, finally into the report, we visualize the data in the form of a graph and chart. Okay, and reports and charts are always used by the top level management. That top level management, maybe even the NEFRA, the top level management, maybe for auditor point of view, will consider CHE. Okay, because output of each and every business report would be even utilized by. Okay, and always the top level management utilize the reports in the form of graphs, the chart. Okay, so in data analytics, there are three level process. Okay, and in data analytics, we extract the data, we perform the data cleaning, perform the data transformation. Okay, we perform the data modeling and finalize the data. So the type of the control from IS auditor point of view, and type of vulnerability, because during data extraction, if suppose right server is not available, if there is any issue with respect to the network, okay, and now who will provide the access? Because during the data analytics, I hope all of you would agree, data would be extracted through the master copy. Okay, because we consider data analytics, we consider about the quality of final information. But IS auditor is again concerned about CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And it is always advisable that never means never disturb the integrity of the master data. So this is again the question. We perform analysis into the copy of the version, and if from IS auditor point of view, it is advisable to never means never disturb the integrity of the master data. So can we say that it is again a one type of a control, and this is a one type of a logical control to maintain confidentiality as well as the integrity. Okay, auditor can able to access the data as per the audit need, as per the audit requirement. Auditor, after performing the analysis, can able to guide to the business organization that there are some vulnerability, but auditor directly don't have the privilege to modify the data. Means auditor can able to access, mean data would be available, auditor can able to read auditor, unable to alter the data. So can we say that this is a case of data integrity? And this is again a one type of a control which is implemented by the DBA before going to assign auditor as per the audit need, as per the audit requirement to access the data. So the question would be framed under the data analytics. And now finally, when we think about the cyber security, okay, so any type of a vulnerability, either with respect to hardware, with respect to the software, with respect to the network, that network may be intra network, that network may be extra network, that network may be internet, that vulnerability is either present into the, earlier we were using the hub, now we are using the switches, okay, and each and every switch having the port, okay, that vulnerability may be present into the firewall, okay, that may be present into the hardware, that vulnerability may be present into the quality of the. So can we say that all this would be, means any type of a unethical acts performed via hardware, via software application, any unauthorized user try to access. Unauthorized means the one who don't have the privilege. That unauthorized is not usually the outsider. That unauthorized user may be the internal user. So cyber security, under the cyber security, what the IS auditor has to do to go through the entire IS and IT infrastructure at each and every level to perform the vulnerability test, at each and every level to perform the threat modeling, at each and every level to perform the control assessment, and each and every level to perform the compliance assessment, and then suggest even the improvisation. So in this manner, the entire module number 5 and module number 6 would be targeted in your examination. Okay. Now, open house, any question if you want to ask, you people free to. Either from module 5, 6, you people can ask from 1 to 6 any module, but at this moment, yes. And so you people gain some clarity based on examination. Ganesh, over to you. Any member, if you are receiving, kindly. Ganesh, are you there? Ganesh, are you there, my dear? Ganesh, Ganesh, are you there, my dear? Yes. Somebody from technical team, Curie. So many best wishes to all of you for upcoming examination. If any query you people ask onto the different platform later on. So once again, many best wishes to all of you. Thank you for your patience listening. Thank you.